Hi everyone, this is Kathy from Sewing Story Projects. Today we're going to be continuing to work on our February wall hanging, and we're going to be working on block number 9. But instead of making one large 12-inch block, what I'm going to be doing is using my 6-inch cube, and we're going to be making 4 smaller blocks. One of the fun part for quilters is always picking out the fabric. And so for my 4 blocks, I'm going to use the following fabrics. So this is going to be for the cross block. It's a contrast of blue and has a little pink in it. For one of the O's, I'm using this fuchsia fabric, and it has, 2 different shades of the pink. For the other O, I'm using this pink and red fabric. And for the heart, I'm going to be using this lighter pink fabric. And of course the background for all of those are going to be the white fabric here. And so let's go ahead and cut out all the pieces. For our parallelograms, we are going to need 4 pieces of fabric face up and 4 pieces of fabric face down. So here's the die. And so I took that strip after I pressed it and I made 2 piles. These are the 4 facing down, and these are the 4 fabrics facing up, and what that does is that will give me mirror images so that we can stitch the 2 parallelograms next to each other. Okay, so next we get to cut. Okay, so this is the non-stretchy side, so I'm going to be placing that on the die, and that is going to go, the non-stretchy way is going to go into the fabric cutter like that. And I have a little mat here, I'm going to put that on. Go ahead and send this through. Quick and easy. Okay, little parallelograms, and these are going to be the 4 face up. And there we go. So now, because they're formed like that, you can see I can put them together so they're mirror images. Alright, so let's go ahead and cut the next piece. Okay, for this next part we are going to be using a different die. These are quarter square triangles. This is die number 5. Alright, so I'm going to need 4 quarter square triangles of the blue fabric and 12 quarter square triangles for the background fabric. So what I did is I cut a strip wide enough for the die, and then I just did 3 layers of the white, and then of course I only need 1 layer of the blue. That makes 4 layers. I can literally run this through all at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and layer those on the die and put my mat on, and I am going to send it through the cutter just like before. And with 3 passes with 2 different dies, I have everything cut for my block already. Okay, so I've begun laying out the block. I have 2/4 done, and I'm going to show you how to assemble this. The first step is to take your 2 mirror image parallelograms, and for these you have a pointed end. When you put them together, you have a pointed end and you have an open area. So we're going to point the pointed end towards the center of the block, and in the open end we're going to add a quarter square triangle in matching fabric. Across from that we're going to lay out a white quarter square, and on either side we're also going to put a white quarter square, and that completes 1/4 of the block. So we're going to repeat the process on the other side. When we lay out the parallelogram, again we're going to have the pointed end towards the center, the open end we're going to put in the matching blue quarter square, and then surround that with the background white quarter squares. And now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch this together, and that will complete our X block. Okay, join me back at the machine. Okay, welcome back. We're over here at my sewing machine, and you can see I have a few basic tools that are very helpful. I have a small ruler. I have a friction marking pen because this erases with heat. I have a pin. I have some snips, seam ripper, a wooden press, a stiletto, and of course I have my squares that I'm going to be putting together. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to put my jumper scrap in, and I'm going to grab the 2 quarter square triangles that are across from each other. I'm going to put right sides together, and we're going to go ahead and stitch this first seam here. And for this piece, I'm going to go ahead and set the seam, and then I'm going to press it open, and that will put the seam on the dot side. Okay, so there we go. That's going to fit right in there. Now, we are going to have a Y seam here. So to do that, I want to stop stitching about 1/4 of an inch from the end, and that'll give me some turning room here. This is the bottom of the 2 parallelograms, and this is called the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put these right sides together, and we are going to sew from the bottom to the top. Now I need to stop about 1/4 of an inch away from the top, so I'm going to put my ruler there, and I'm going to go ahead and do a little line here so I know where to stop. Now this is a small seam. I don't really need a pin to hold that, but a jumper scrap is very helpful, just because I don't want, since I'm starting at a tip there, I don't want my sewing machine to eat the thread. So I go ahead and put that in and go ahead and start here. Now as I get close to that line, I am going to slow down, and then I'm just going to do a couple little small back stitches and pull that out. Just cut the jumper scrap there. Okay, and you can see I have a little bit of leeway here, and I'm going to press this seam open. Just finger press it. In doing that, you can see the iron erased my marks, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my marker and my ruler here and just draw a line from the center seam 1/4 of an inch away, and then do the same thing on this side. I'm just starting at that pivot point there and just drawing a line like that, and this is kind of my pivot corner right here, and that's where the stitching ends as well, from when we stitched from here to here. Okay, now, so, you know what I need to do? I need to make that 1/4 of an inch mark on this as well. Sorry about that. We're going to do a 1/4 of an inch mark here as well. And you can see my pivot point is right there. Okay, now when I flip it right sides together, I have a pin. I can put a pin through that pivot point. Okay, so I'm going to put a pin through that pivot point and put a pin through this pivot point here. And I go ahead and line up the raw edges, and the tip of the parallelogram sticks out. That's okay. And I'm going to stitch from our pivot point here. Okay, so you can see that I stitched from our pivot point here off the edge, so that put that right side together. Okay, now we want to be able to pivot the other way. Did you see what I did? Like, here's this side stitched. Okay, now I want to get this right side and that right side together. So I'm just going to pull this around like that and line up these raw edges. Again, this little point goes off the edge, that's okay. And so this doesn't get in the way, this little fabric here, I'm going to go ahead and pull that out so it's out of the way. Just lay this down flat. And now I'm going to stitch, and I'm going to lay this and align these raw seams. And I go forward a couple, back a couple, and then go ahead and sew off the edge. Okay, so that is the pivot point on this side. That was the pivot point, and then when we open it up, we press this seam open, the one that where it joined the two parallelograms, and you can see this seam automatically wants to go down. Okay, which is great. I'm going to go ahead and press that. You can see this from this side. Okay, so I just pressed it real quick, and then I have my scissors, and I'm just going to cut that little piece off and just kind of follow the edge of the fabric here, just so they're not sticking out. Okay, get my little scraps. And the last piece is to add these two white quarter squares to this side and this side next to our parallelogram. And again, the edges have been engineered there. Like I said, normally they are, but when you're working with parallelograms, they're not. And I simply line up that edge, line up that edge, and then we're going to go ahead and stitch that down. That's right sides together. So I finished stitching both of those quarter square triangles to both sides, and I went ahead and I pressed our block open, and you can see we have, you know, 3.5 by 3.5 here, and that completes our 1/4 of the square. And again, you put the pointy end towards the center. And so you can see I've stitched 3 of these, and I have 1 more left to go, and then I'm going to show you how to join the 4 mini blocks together to make 1 large block. Alright, be right back. Okay, so you can see that I have all 4 quarters of my X blocks sewn together, and now it's just a matter of putting together the 4 patch. So I'm just going to flip this over and flip this over. Okay, and we want to line up these two, you know, where the dot meets the white and the dot meets the white. We just want to make sure that lines up. I'll go ahead and stick a pin in there. Okay, and then we're just going to align the raw edges there and go ahead and stitch that. Now to join these, the bottom half and the top half, okay, I'm going to turn it this way. This is going to be my piece on the bottom. So I'm going to have this seam go down. Okay, and then this, when you put right sides together, this seam is going to go up. Okay, so I'm just going to pin those so they nest. Okay, and then I'm going to get 2 more pins just to align these parts where, you know, you've got your dot with your background. So I just want to make sure these 2 align nicely. I'm going to go ahead and line these 2 up and put a pin there, and we are almost done. Okay, can you believe it? Now I'm just going to press this out and you can see a nice picture of the final product. Okay, I squared off the block and here it is. Isn't it adorable? It's a little 6-inch cross block. Ta-da! Okay, so please join me for the 2 O's and the heart block that we're going to sew up next, and that'll be in the following video. Thanks for sewing along with me. Take care. Bye.